Yeah, okay. All right, so this is going to be a workshop about sockets. For those of you who are doing anything that requires like live updating or games, chat, whatnot, this will be probably one of the most important things that we will have in Web Lab. And also, so I guess like for just a quick outline of what we'll be doing today, we're going to start off with, just a little quick recap on a lot of the sort of overview of just like everything we've done so far, just like React, on the front end and the back end. And then we're going to build something pretty interesting using just stuff that we already have gone over. It will be pretty involved, but don't worry, we'll like get through it step by step. So each little step will hopefully be something that is manageable. And then in part 3, we'll add sockets to that thing. All right. So is my clicker going to work? Yeah. Starting with the front end. So we start off with React, right? React is just a nice way to like represent everything we have on the front end. I'm going to skim through this pretty quickly because Akshay covered it already in this morning. So it lets us like split our website into a bunch of components that are kind of like nested boxes. On the top level, we have something like the feed, and then that branches out into like the news story button and also the individual cards. And then we have things like the single story, you have things like the comments block, and so on. Yeah, so you kind of get like this sort of tree structure when you build with React. It's just a system of like nested boxes that you get, which kind of lets you organize and manipulate what you have on the front end. All right, a couple of useful JavaScript functions I want to talk about real quick, just before we get into things, is map and filter. So map is just a function that maps an array, it converts one array into another. And what it does is it just takes every element like step by step, and it just applies this function to that element. So it just takes an array, maps each element to something else, and then gives you an output array. And the way that you use it is kind of like this, where you take an array in dot map, you have some kind of function where it just maps an element to like whatever the output is, and it generates an output. So like for example, a quick demonstration, you have like actually let's skip this one. This one's boring. Let's do this one. So we have an array of turtles, right? Dan, Alan, Claire, Vincent, Akshay, Helen, and you have a function over there called put hat on my turtle, and it just says if the turtle starts with the letter A, then you put a hat on it, and if not, you just return the turtle by itself. So if we take this array of turtles and we use a map with this function, then we get something like this, where just the turtles with the letter A, or that start with the letter A, have hats on them, and the others are just the same. So this is kind of how you might use map. Filter is pretty similar. So filter just takes also an array and outputs an array. But what it does is it just has some sort of Boolean function, which just means it's like true or false on each element. If it's true, then it keeps the element, and if it's false, it just kicks it out of the array. So it generates a new array in this way. So we can have something like this. You take the same array, but instead we have a function down there which says do I start with A, and it just says does the turtle's name start with the letter A? And if it does, then we keep it. If it doesn't, then we remove it. So when you use a filter, you just get Alan and Akshay. Yeah, and also we have like the map to put the hats on them. So this is kind of just how map and filter work. They're actually pretty useful functions in working with JavaScript. So I thought I'd go over them real quick. All right. We talked about APIs. We talked about how do we communicate from the front end to the back end. On the client side, you want to make an API call, like a GET request or a POST request. In this case, we just have a GET request. We have a specific endpoint, which we have in this case just /API/songs. And then we can give it a request, which is this thing like genre, pop, year 2000. And then you will take the result using .then and then do some function with it, which is song from server and then set songs to that thing. All right, so this is kind of how we call API endpoints. We talked about the router. The router is just like a component that lets us render multiple pages in our front end. In this case, we have like the feed, we have the profile, we have not found, and we'll be adding a Chatbook page. But yeah, all right, let's talk about the backend real quick. So on the backend, we have the central server that is the brain of our computation. It's the brain of our website. And then we have a bunch of clients that are all just running React. So the server by itself doesn't really know how to do anything, but then you can write endpoints for the server by writing all of these API endpoints. Each API endpoint only does one thing. So for example, /API/whoami, which again covered just previously, tells us like who the user is, and that's its only job. And so endpoints let the server kind of do what it's supposed to do. And every time you want to do a different thing, you need to write a unique endpoint. So yeah, you can write a bunch of endpoints like this, like maybe like getting stories, posting stories, getting comments, and each one of them just does their own thing. And then the server can call them as necessary. All right, cool. So yeah, when the clients now use, they want like whatever they want, like get me stories, get me all the comments with this story ID. The server just like, I got you, gives them to it. But yeah. Okay, now we have databases. So on databases, we have the server sort of talking to MongoDB, which we've set up. So for example, if the client, sends a message, they would store it, instead of on the server, they would just tell the server, here, I made a message. And then the server will then go and pass it on to MongoDB and store it away in a safe place on the cloud where it won't be destroyed. And then if the client, later wants to see a message, they can ask server, hey, can I get some messages? And the server will then go to MongoDB and go and fetch all of those messages. We talked about database schemas. So schemas are just like a sort of blueprint for what an object you want to store in the database looks like. So we just identify some basic features of like the object, and everything that we store on the database will follow like some kind of schema. All right. We have the auth stuff. So this is like, I guess like just pretty fresh, but just the real quick thing is auth lets you get user IDs and user names, for example, so that you can identify like who the person is that is using the app. But yeah, and we kind of do this for you in our skeleton. So I guess this is like the new sort of updated version of the whole app. We have the client, which is just you running on your computer. You have the server, which is the brains. The server then authenticates with Google, as Dan mentioned just a couple minutes ago. And then we have MongoDB, which is our database that stores all of the sort of big information that we want to store. All right, so that's all we have for recaps. Let's get right into the main stuff, right? So the CF Chatbook is calling. Great job, WebLabber. Chatbook is very popular. But unfortunately, our customers are very mad because they have to refresh the page to see new stories and new posts. They want live interaction. They want chat. So let's make something for them. All right, so now this is what we're going to be doing. We're going to be making Chatbook. It's like Chatbook with chat. All right, here we go. So what is Chatbook going to look like? You can, I guess, see a preview of what Chatbook is going to look like in the end if you go to weblab.to/example. But the summary is we're going to have a sort of list of chats. There's going to be an all chat, which is just everyone. There's going to be individual people like DMs, essentially. And then there's going to be just the actual chat with like the messages, and you can send messages and see other people's messages. All right, so this is kind of the goal of what we're working towards. Cool. Okay. Oh, doesn't work. All right. So far on our front end like React framework, we have this sort of big system. We have the feed. We have all the stuff in the feed. We have the profile. We have like a couple other miscellaneous pages. And now we're going to add in this section over here. So this is Chatbook. It's going to be separate from the feed and the profile and whatnot. We're going to have all these components, which I will cover in just a minute. Okay. So let's plan out what the front end of Chatbook is going to look like. And we're going to refer back to this like periodically to just like remind ourselves what the end goal kind of is going to be. So Chatbook is going to be a new page. The whole page we're going to call like this Chatbook. You can see like there's a sort of chat section. We're going to have a chat list, but it's going to be on the left. This is like just a list of the open chats we have. And we're going to have the physical chat like stuff on the right. And this is just messages. All right. Okay. So on the chat list, we have individual DMs. We have the all chat, and these are going to be called like, users and whatnot. And then on the right, you have chat, and you have a bunch of singular messages like in a row. And then we have a new message function, which just lets us input new messages and send them. All right. So if we look at the sort of props and states that we need to store and pass down. So we have our overall app level, and that's going to store the user ID as a prop, and it will pass it down to Chatbook, because obviously the Chatbook needs to know like who the user is, so they know like who is sending the messages. The Chatbook is going to maintain some states, right? So it's going to maintain this state called active chat. Right now, I've just called the data like chat data, but it's just a big array of like all the messages that are being sent like in the currently open chat. This is like the stuff that's going to be displayed. It's going to pass down a prop, which is chat data, to the actual chat window itself, and it's going to display that. The chat data or the chat will be composed of messages, and each message is going to have a user, right? And it's going to have a sort of content, which is what the string, like the actual message was sent. And the user object will contain something like an ID, so we know like who it is, and a name, which is like the person that actually, the name of the person. So hopefully this makes some sense. This is just kind of the overall view of like how we're going to sort of manipulate the data of Chatbook. All right, so let's look at the back end of Chatbook. So the endpoints that we want a get chat endpoint, and this is going to just return all of the messages for a given chat. So let's say like we want all chat, just get all the messages in all chat, or if on a DM, just get all the messages in this DM. We also want a post message endpoint, which just lets us send a message to this chat. So that's basically all the endpoints we need. There's not too much else to it. And we will write these out later. All right. So yeah, here's some stuff. We'll have a general get chat endpoint, which just lets us get everything in all chat. And tomorrow we will make an endpoint that will get chats or get chat messages for DMs. So today we'll just be working on the all chat part. All right. So just a quick recap of the design that we kind of want to plan out. The front end is going to have Chatbook. It's going to have the chat portion. Each chat is going to have a bunch of messages and a new message button. And then the back end is going to have these two endpoints, a get chat endpoint and a post message endpoint. So this is what we're going to be making today. So yeah, let's get started. All right. So first of all, if you open VS Code or a terminal, you can type in git fetch, git reset -- hard, and git checkout w8 -- starter. So this will get us started with the basic code that we need. I will do the same here. Let's git checkout w8 starter. Type. Okay. All right. Let me hide these controls. There we go. Okay. So hopefully everyone is caught up, or just a minute. But yeah, let's give you all a minute to get this opened. So step one. Hi. Is everyone good? Is there any time? Raise your hand if you need some more time. Okay, Alan. All right. Is that everyone good? All right. Looks like should be caught up. Okay, so right now, if we have W8 starter and we run localhost 5000 on some kind of browser, I'm just going to reload this real quick. You should see there's a home page, which just has what we made before. There is now a login button, which was added for you. And there's a chat button. Now, right now, the chat doesn't do anything. It's like just empty. But you'll add some stuff to this. All right. So what we want in step one, so first we're going to be making the front end display of what Chatbook is going to look like. So step one, we want to have a just general display of what this chat is going to look like. We're going to have some dummy text in here, just a few messages that we just hard code in. And we're going to have a submit button or like a submit field with this new message stuff. But so far, we're not going to hook anything up to the backend. We're just going to have it console log whatever we submit. And this is going to be what we're going to be building first. just so we can see things a little bit easier. All right. So right now, you don't have to do this on your own. We'll just walk through it step by step because this part is a bit involved. I'll try to explain to you everything that I'm doing as we go. Also, if you ever get lost, there is our latest stuff at the top right here, the git fetch, git reset hard, git checkout, W8 starter. This will change throughout the course of the workshop, obviously. So if you ever get lost, you just type those commands, you'll get caught up to where we are. Awesome. So step one, let's break it down. What exactly do we need here? So there's a lot of, this looks like a lot of stuff, but don't worry, we'll get through it piece by piece. The main thing is we're going to break it down into 6 sub-steps. Oops. Yeah, so why is this not working? Hello? Okay, so there's going to be a step 1.1. We're going to make a new message functionality. And in 1.2, we will make a sort of way for the new message, like little bar, the submit button, to actually do things. We will add single message, which is just like each little line of a message in our chat. And then we will add the overall chat window. And then we'll add like that window to the overall Chatbook page and so on. And we'll kind of like work through this from inside to out. Okay, so let's get started. Yeah, so step 1.1, we're going to look at the bottom of this file that we have made for you. It's called newpostinput.js. And feel free to follow along in your code in VS Code. But you don't need to type anything right now. You can just follow along if you just want to know where things are. Oh, yeah, good point. Is this better? Oh, that might be a little too big. All right, cool. So step 1.1, we want to just make new message have, just new message exist. So right now, new message is just this function that returns this empty div. And we're going to add some stuff here. So more specifically, we want to, let's just get rid of this div for now. We're going to add a component called new post input, which we have sort of created in earlier, which we've used for submitting comments or stories already. So we're just going to use the sort of same kind of input thing. So new post input, and we're going to have some default text, and we're going to set that to just new message. So this is just oh, actually I can self-close this thing. So we're just going to have a little just input bar with the default text of new message. That's all there is to it right now. And it's not hooked up to anything yet. So right now, I guess we just finished step 1.1. Boom. Let's do step 1.2. All right. So we're going to need a sort of function that we will run every time that the user clicks submit. And so what we might do here is write a function like send message, maybe taken of some kind of value, and it'll look like this. And for now, since we don't have anything we want to do, we just want to log it to the console. We'll just write console.log value. So all this function does right now is it just takes in the value and just prints it to the console. So this should be pretty straightforward. All right. Now, let's make our single message do its thing. Okay. So single message is going to be just a message of one user sending some content. And so that is going to be, let's close a couple things. That is going to be in single message.js. Let's open up single message.js. Okay, so there's step 1.3. Right now, single message is just an empty div, so let's fix that. And this part is going to be, I guess, a little bit more complex. So feel free, you don't have to follow along in the code because there'll be a lot of stuff. Let's put some things in a single message. Let's make a span. And inside of the span, we want to type in props.message.sender.name. Yes. So this is just, I guess, the person who is sending the message. We're just going to try to get that, and it's going to be passed in as a prop to single message. So we just take that prop, we get the sender's name for that message. And yeah, and let's put in a couple other things. So let's add in, just some stuff to make it look nice. I'm just gonna type in some styling, name, uflex dash align center. Also, if you want to know where these CSS styles come from, the u dash somethings all come from the utilities.css file. So if like, for example, if you want to open these up, you can see all of these stylings are over here. And things that we'll use later, like for example, right now I will type in, single message container. This can be found in single message.css. If I open this up, you'll see single message container, just sets some margins. So this is just styling stuff. It's not super important. So don't worry about this right now. Let's just fill in the rest of this pretty quickly. Okay. Single message sender. Oh, yeah, actually, this is part of this span. Cool. Let's add something at the end to give us, something like this. Class name equals single message content. And it's just going to style the actual content of the message. So earlier we did the name of the person, and now we're going to do the content. So single props.message.content, and this we're going to pass in later. Yeah, so this should look pretty good. So this is pretty much all we need to do for just the message. We're just displaying a div that contains, the sender's name, and then we contain the content. So that's all there is to single message. And also, don't worry about keeping up right now. We will check out to the next step pretty quickly. But yeah, so hopefully this makes sense. All right, so step 1.4, we want to work on, let's see, we want to make the chat overall, like the sort of chat screen, right? So chat screen is going to be in a file called chat.js, which is right here. In chat.js, if we scroll down, you see step 1.4, populate chat.js. Right now it is an empty div. So let's fix that as well. And this will also be a bit long, so do not worry about keeping up. And also, if you have any questions at any point, please ask someone, or just raise your hand, put yourself on the help queue, and one of the TAs will be glad to help you. All right, let's make some nice styling. Yes, and also if you see anything like dash, like chat dash something, this styling is going to be found in chat dash or chat.css. Okay, so in the chat, you might want to say something like, if you look at our sort of display, you want to have a chatting with and the person you're chatting with, or in this case, all chat. So let's add that. So we're just going to make a header. Oops. Say like chatting with, I don't know, props.data.recipient.name. So this is just getting the name of the person we are chatting with. And then let's make another div with the actual stuff, like the messages inside of it. So in this case, we're going to add in props.data.messages. And now we're going to use our trusty map function. So messages is going to be an array of messages. And so we're going to map each message along with its index. So M is the message and I is the index. And it's going to map to, it's going to map to a single message with the actual message being this message, and the key being, the key being this index. And the reason why we need a key is that for some reason, React does not like it when you make arrays that do not have unique indices using map and filter. So usually you'll have to have some kind of key, and it has to be unique for each element. So something as simple as just setting it equal to the index of the array is going to work for us. All right. And then let's also add, our new message button at the bottom. Oh, let's make this go back away. All right, click escape. So let's add a new message button at the bottom. So we're going to make a div. We're going to add new message, and we're going to have the recipient information, so I know who we're sending the message to. This is not going to be displayed, but it is good information to have so that we know who we're sending it to when we click that submit button. All right, so this is props.data.recipient. This is just the recipient of the message. And let's close this. Okay, let's style it a little bit. I'm just going to pull some nice styling. This is not super necessary, but I just like it making like having it look good. Last name. Oops. Chat-new container. Okay. Don't forget to save. All right. So this should be good for our chat screen. Now, if we go back, we'll still notice that localhost 5000 does not have anything. And that's because we have the chat screen, but we have not displayed the chat screen on our Chatbook page. So let's do that. If we look at Chatbook, which is in, let's see, pages, chatbook.js. I'm going to close some of these CSS files. So in Chatbook, we should have something that returns down here. So right now, our Chatbook is not returning anything. It's just like an empty HTML tag. So let's make that a little nicer. And we will just use some dummy data for now. So let's make a div, just because we like using divs. All right, so in this Chatbook page, we want to return the actual physical chat that we just made. So we're going to make a chat, and then we're going to have some data in the chat. So this data is going to be something like this. Let me close this so it doesn't error. And the data will be an object because remember when we made chat.js, we want data.messages and like data.recipient. So we'll have to make these properties. So data will be an object, and it will have a recipient. And that recipient right now is going to be something called all chat, which we have not defined yet, but we will. And then we will have the actual messages in the all chat. And right now we're just going to use some test messages since we don't have any messages yet. Okay. This looks good. All right, let's make our div look a little nicer using some styling. Oops. Flexbox is your friend. And yes, once again, chatbook-container can be found in a chatbook.css file. Yeah, okay. And actually, let's add another layer of divs, and we'll move this inside of it just to make it look even better. Boom. And this is going to have class name with chatbook-chat container, so like an inner container, and some more styling. So this, don't worry about all the styling stuff. You can just go into CSS files and look at what that looks like. But I guess the main structure is just, we have, let's see, so we have our new post input. This is what we made first, right? So this is just a sort of submit bar that we made already from previous workshops with a text that says new message. We have a function that just, whenever we want to, click the submit button, it's going to send console log. We have our single messages. So these are just each individual message. This is going to have a sender name and the content in line with each other, which is why we use spans. We have our chat, which consists of a bunch of single messages, like an array of single messages, and then a new message button or like the new message bar at the bottom. And then our chat book, which is like our page, which contains the chat itself. And we're going to have the all chat and test messages as a recipient and as our messages. So let's input this dummy data in. We can put it up here. So let's say something like const all chat and equals, and the recipient is going to need an ID. So in this case, later tomorrow, the ID will actually be the user's ID, which we get from Google. But right now, for all chat, we'll just say the ID is just all chat because we're lazy. And then it'll have a name, which will also just say it's all chat. Boom. Yeah, and we need our dummy data right now. So that's going to be test messages. And this is going to just have a couple messages. Let's see, what kind of messages do we want? So in our messages, each message needs to have a sender, and the name of this sort of variable, this field, is what we display in single message. So it's going to have props.message.sender. So this is the sender that we're making right now. So sender needs to be a user, so it's going to have an ID. Let's say just right now it's 0. This is some person, and maybe there's a name, and it says, I don't know, maybe it's Nikhil. There we go. Right now, we're going to have some content as well. So the message needs to have content. And maybe he says something like, I don't know, I spend too much time on Piazza. Okay. All right. Maybe we have, oh, sorry, this should be a straight bracket. That's why it's being mad. There we go. Let's have like maybe a second message just so we can see more than one thing. Let's make a sender. Okay, this slightly more quickly. Let's say this ID is 1, and the name is Alan. And maybe he's saying something like, let's draw Sasuke with a me customizer. All right. So if we save everything, we will notice that if we go back to Chatbook, oh, something is not right. Let's see what's wrong. Type error, cannot read properties undefined in sender, a single message. Oh, did I spell something wrong? Single message. Props.message.sender.name. I think it should be right. Perhaps we have not sent the chat correctly. Chatbook messages recipient. Yeah, no, this looks right. Okay. Message.sender.name. Interesting. ID all chat senders like this. That is very strange. Let's see. Let's do some live debugging. That single message. Line 81. Huh? Single message. And a single message created by chat. Reading sender. Okay, let's remove this temporarily and see if that fixes the problem. Really? Props. Oh, did I not pass in the props correctly? Perhaps that is the reason. Let's see. Yes, okay, so that is where the issue is. Live debugging, let's go. Props.data.recipient.name.
Oh, there's 3 F's. There's it.
I see. There we go. I cannot spell. All right, nice. So this works now. You can see we have, it says chatting with all chat at the top. We have Nikhil saying, I spent too much time on Piazza. You have Alan saying, let's draw Sasuke with the me customizer. And if we say something else like, gotcha. Okay, so you say something like, this is step 1. And we click submit. You should see, oh my, more stuff is not working. Oh, I did not add an on submit. So in our new post input, on submit equals send message. Maybe this will work. Hello. There we go. So now we see hello printed out in console log whenever we click submit. And then we have our messages. So this is just step 1. If you want to check out to this step, if you go here, by the way, this is where the locations of all of the individual substeps are, if you want to like take a look at them. But if you check out to W8-step 1 or get reset-hard, check out to W8 step 1, you should see pretty much the same thing as we have just created. And it should show like this same thing when you run it on localhost 5000. I know this is like a lot of stuff, so like don't worry if you don't really got, you didn't really get everything completely, but hopefully it was like broken down in like a more digestible manner in like each little substep. In reality, it's just working through a lot of like little pieces that sort of add up to the whole thing. Yeah, so I guess for now, let's break for lunch. We'll come back in, I think, 40. Yes. Don't just make the announcement.
Okay.
Alan, you're trolling.
Okay, there's a sponsor lecture later this afternoon, and there is a $50 Amazon gift card raffle. So yeah, just make sure to come to that.
We will resume workshop 8 after lunch. So be back, please. And we'll get to the cool stuff then. What?
I forgot that it was broadcasting. Let's just say 1:15, yeah.
All right, so lunch is going to end at 1:15, so try to be back by then. We have some more content to get through. So, all right. All right, so I know like lunch break was a little bit short today, but and also people trickling in over the next couple minutes, but that's okay. So I guess since we have a lot to cover, we'll just get right back into it. So if you do git reset -- hard and git checkout W8 step 1, you should be able to see all the stuff that we just did before we broke for lunch. Oh, also, yeah, quick announcement, by the way. There will be a $50 Amazon gift card or something raffled off at the sponsor lecture, which is at 2 p.m. with the ramp. So you should come to that because you can win money. Yeah. All right. So back to Chatbook. All right. So step 2, which is what we're going to be working on now, is going to be adding a state called active chat to Chatbook. So right now, our Chatbook has a let me hide this. Our Chatbook has some stuff hard-coded into it, which is like, all chat and test messages. Those are still going to be hard-coded for now, but we want our chat to have a recipient that can change so that we can have like our little bar on the side. We won't actually make the bar today. That stuff will be made tomorrow, but you just want to have like a sort of stub of that capability first. All right, so let's get right into it. So first of all, also you don't have to follow along on the code like right now. So just, I guess you can just look at the screen. Yeah, let's get checkout W8 let's get reset hard first. Get reset -- hard, get checkout W8 step 1. There we go. Awesome. So step 2.1, we're going to add the state, the actual state itself. And it says it right here in chatbook.js. So let's do this. The way we add states is using something like this. So like active state, active chat, and also a set active chat method. And this is going to be, this is going to be it's going to say use state. And this is in order for React to update appropriately. So we're going to do use state, and we're going to have a recipient, and which we'll set to all chat right now, and messages, which we're going to set to test messages once again. So this right here is just the same as the data that we pass into chat. So all we're doing is we're just like going to move it somewhere else. Okay. Yeah, for those of you who are coming in just a bit late, we'll be having a raffle for a $50 Amazon gift card during the sponsor lecture at 2 p.m. if you ask questions. So be sure to come to that, ask some questions, and you might get a chance to win some free money. Let's go. All right, so this is basically all we need to do here for creating this active chat state. And then now we will change our chat data right here to use active state instead of this stuff here. So instead of this, we'll just use active chat. Boom. All right. If we go back to the chat book itself, we should see Oh, use state is not defined. Let's import use state. There we go. All right. So we should see that we have to log in first. So let's do that. And you should see this stuff looks exactly the same as before. All we did was we moved the hard-coded chat prop or the chat props to this thing called active chat, this state. All right, cool. Let's move on to step 3. So everyone, you can do git reset -- hard and git checkout w8 step 2 to get caught up to where we are right now. Yeah. And just as a reminder, these commands to get caught up will always be in the top left. So for step 3, we're going to be implementing the API endpoints themselves. So there are a couple things that we need to do. First of all, we need to tell the server what a message looks like. And this will be in the form of a schema. And then we will make 2 endpoints, a post message endpoint and a get chat endpoint. So that's what we're going to be doing. So yeah, let's add the message schema first. So the message schema is going to be in, we have to go down to, let me get reset -- hard first, get checkout w8 step 2. Awesome. Okay. If we go down to the server section, we should see a message.js in the models folder. So this is where we store all of our schemas. So if we have the message.js, this is a schema. And right now it has nothing in it, but we want the database to know kind of what this message should look like. We already kind of have an idea for what the message should look like. If we look at the hard-coded messages we made earlier, like they should have a sender, in the sender should have an ID and a name, and they should have content, which is like some string. And also we probably want a recipient for the message, but it's not in here, but the recipient will be in our schema. So let's do that. Let's first make the sender. So the sender is going to be something like this with an ID and a string. Oops. Maybe you want name. There's also a string. And then we also want the recipient of this. Oh no. We want the recipient. So the recipient is going to be like also a user. So it's going to have this same like ID, which is a string. We have the name, which is also a string. And then we want a timestamp, probably. So we know like what order to display the messages in, or at least what order to store the messages in. So let's add a timestamp. And don't worry too much about like what this does right now. So this is just using a type called date, which is actually a built-in type to JavaScript that lets you store date and time. And we're going to use date.now, which just gives us the current date and time. If you want to look more into date, you can just Google date and on like MDN, and it should give you all the information you need. And obviously we need the content, which is going to be a string. All right, so this is our schema. It just has a sender, which is a user. It has a recipient, which is another user. It's a time, which is when the message is sent. And it has some content, which is just a string the person writes. You don't have to type this in, just like make sure you kind of like understand sort of what this is trying to do. So just a user that's doing the sending, a user that is receiving the message, when it's being sent, and what is being sent. So that's really all there is to the message schema. Okay. Let's look at step 3.2. So what is step 3.2? Let's go back. So step 3.2 is writing this post message request. So let's do that. The post message request should be also in the server side. And it should be under api.js. So let's open api.js. Yeah, right here, it has this marked step 3.2. So we can just follow a very similar pattern as all of our previous API endpoints that you can all see over here. So the API endpoints should start with something like, since it's a post endpoint, router.post. And it should be something like message, because that's the name of the endpoint. I'm going to do some authorization stuff, which you can, when you're actually building your own websites, you can essentially just sort of copy and use the same format that we've done here. But this just makes sure that like the user is actually logged in when they send messages, or else it will fail. And we're going to quickly console the log, just making sure that we actually get it. So let's say something like received message from, I don't know. Oh, I already used backticks. Let's make this backticks. And let's do something like rec.user.name. The authorization, like login, allows us to just get rec.user, which is like an object that stores both the name and also the ID, which is like underscore ID for each client's, or like the client user. All right, and let's just say the actual content, let's just display it here, rec.body.content. So this is kind of how you access what the user has sent. So yeah. And let's see, since we want to store these messages on the database and not on the server itself, we'll have to create a message following our schema on like right here. So we'll make a const, which is a message. So this is just following what we have in our schema. And we should have a recipient. So the recipient is just the person who is sending this API request, and that is rec.body.recipient. The sender is going to use is going to have an ID, which is the ID of the user that is sending this. And this is how you access the person's ID of the person that is sending it. And the name is similarly going to be rec.user.name. So this is how you access the ID and name of the client that is sending the information. And then the content will just be rec.body.content. So notably, like rec just stands for request. It's like the client's request to the server. And it will have a user property. The user is just like the person sending it, and you can access their properties like ID and name. And there's a body to the request, which is just the stuff that is actually being sent. And in this case, we can just get the content out of that. All right. So that should be good for the actual message. And now we have to save it to the server itself. So let's do message .save. And this should save it to MongoDB. Perfect. So this is all we need to do for the message API endpoint. Also, don't worry if like some of the nitty-gritty stuff on like, for example, the auth and like exactly how .save works. But for the most part, you just have to like sort of use the stuff that we give you. Just follow the message schema, and you can do something like this. So if you want to implement the the get chat method or endpoint, it looks pretty similar. So you also have to start with router, but this time you use get. And the endpoint is going to be chat. This is just get chat. Okay. And let's use our recres. Oops, here we go. Oh no. All right. When we get our request, we should do something like should create a query to the database. And that query is going to contain, the recipient ID. So this is the person, like which chat we are trying to get the messages for. And in this case, we're just going to use all chat for now. So we're not being too specific. And the actual server will then do message.find, and we'll get this query. Oh, I keep turning that on. Here, message.find query. So this will go and look in the server to try to find all messages that have recipient ID all chat. So once we find all of the messages that are in the all chat, we can use .then, and we take those messages and we send them back to the user. So that is response.send, and send them back. So what this is just doing is when the client calls the get chat endpoint, it will make a query. So the server will then make a query called just query, which has this information. It just says we're going to get all of the messages that are labeled with all chat from the server, and it will send them all back to the client. So the server is just acting as sort of a middleman here, just taking, the client wants all the messages from all chat. The server then just asks the database, can I get all the messages from all chat? And then it sends it back to the client. So that's all this is doing. Also, if you have any questions, please just post on the questions doc or add yourself to the queue, and someone will be glad to help you. All right. So this is all we have to do for the API endpoints. There's just 2 endpoints right here. Okay. Let's see. What should we do next? So we have our message schema implemented. We have our API endpoints implemented. And now this part I will actually do for you since we are a bit short on time as well. So if we do git reset --hard and check out w8-step3, you will see that all this stuff will be implemented. You can see the code there. Git reset --hard. Okay. So right now the only thing we have left to do on the client side is we want to make sure that the send message button, instead of logging to the console, it actually sends the message to the server and uses those API endpoints. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the new post input where we defined a send message function. It says console log value right now. So we can convert this into something that actually calls the API. Let's get rid of the console log for now. And we can construct the body of our request by saying something like const body equals recipient. We need our recipient in our request. And this is all in our client. And we have a content, which is just like what is actually in the submit button, like what the user types in. And we're going to call our post request. And we're going to post to API message. And we're going to post this body. So this is all you have to do to call the API from the client side. We just make a body. This is just what we're going to tell the server. And then we do a post request, and that will send that off to the server. All right. Okay, one last thing. So if you do, let's see. Yeah, I guess this is just exactly what I just did. If we do git reset --hard and check out to step 4, you'll notice that that is basically exactly what has happened. Now, the one last thing we have to do is we have to load any chat messages from the server onto the client. So you have a way to send messages to the server, and now we want a way to see the messages that are on the server. So that should be in chat.js. Oh, yes, perhaps, no, chatbook.js. Yes. So we want to implement this thing called load message history, which has actually been here the entire time. It's currently blank. And this will call the API endpoint /API/chat and use that to set the active chat. And then we will then use that load message history function to actually display what we want on the screen. So that's basically what we're doing. Okay. So first, for the getting API chat, it's pretty similar to how I use the post message endpoint. We just do get /API/chat. We need our request. Let's do something like this. Going to be recipient _ID. And then the actual value is the ID of the recipient. So it's recipient ._ID. Now, once we get once we get the chat messages, we want to use .then to process them. And .then will take the messages that we obtain, and it will do the following. So .then we'll call set active chat, which we made earlier up here, to set the current chat stuff. So the recipient will be set with just the recipient. Okay. And then it will set the messages to be the messages that we just obtained. All right. So this messages is just the messages that we just got from our API call. Perfect. Okay. Let's add some. Oh, I don't need that. There we go. So that is what we need to do for the API call. And now we just need to use this load message history function. If we we have an empty use effect callback right here. So let's use our load message history. Load message history, all chat for anyone load all chat as our recipient. And yeah, so use effect will just run one time. So when we open the website, it'll just run this section once. It'll just load the message history for all chat, and we should be able to see all of our stuff. So if we go back to this, did I do something wrong? I don't know. Perhaps I did. Oh, messages, plural. There we go. All right, we log in, and now we should be able to see. Oh, you deleted all the messages. Oh no. Okay, you can type in some messages. Hello, I'm here. And we won't see anything right now, but if we like refresh the page, we'll notice, whoa, there's a bunch of messages that we can see now. And people can send messages, blah, blah, blah. So this is like essentially what we just made is the Chatbook feature that we want. There is one slight problem, and that is, if I send a message like, hello, and I click submit, I won't see anything show up. And neither will anyone else using the website. Like the only way to see the new messages is actually reload the page, and then you'll see, oh, there's new stuff. So this is close to what we want, but not quite. So let's go back to this. And yeah, we have done that. So now we're going to get to the actual real-time component. Okay, so this is what you actually came for like the sockets lecture. Yeah. So what we want to have happen is if someone sends, an API request to the server and says, hey, I'm going to post a message. I said like, Fluffy says meow. What you want to have happen is the server then just tells everyone else, Fluffy said meow, right? And that's exactly what we want. Unfortunately, the server can't do that because the client is the one making the call to the server. The server can't just tell stuff to the client without being prompted. So the server cannot initiate conversations. This is kind of unfortunate. So how do we fix this? Well, one thing we can do is what we call polling. So this client, which like let's say in this case is like Joe. So he'll ask the server like every few seconds, like, hey, do you got any new messages? The server say no. Got any new messages? No. Got any new messages? No. Got any new messages? No. Got any messages? Yes. Here's the message. So that is one way of doing it. But this is very resource intensive. It's kind of inefficient. It's just kind of bad, honestly. So how do we fix this? Any ideas? How might we fix this? Anything? All right, sorry, it's a trick question. So just teach a server to initiate conversations. Like, it's not that hard, right? Just make the server do it. So I just said the server can't initiate conversations, but actually there's a catch. So using a library called Socket.io, you can actually just tell the server to initiate conversations. So this is a very, very powerful tool to just do sort of live communication between the client and the server. So how do we do this? Or like, what does it do? So in this case, instead of Joe asking the server repeatedly for messages, Joe will then say, hey, server, let's open a socket together. It's like a private communication line. The server says, okay, bet, and then they just have a socket, and they have like a sort of private communication line. Now the server can then use this communication line to send messages to the client. All right. So for example, you can imagine it like the server and the client have a sort of like, these cup string phone things. Yeah, so they can just talk back and forth now. And you can have multiple sockets with multiple clients. And also, in the case of today, you can have the server just shout to everybody that's listening. So what we'll be doing today is, since we have all chat, we'll just have the server shout everything it sees to the client. All right. So in the case of Chatbook, we want, whenever the server receives a message from any of the users, let's say a user calls the API endpoint, a/API/message, and it's going to post a message. The server will then broadcast to everyone, hey, this guy sent a message. All of you should know that this message is here now. Okay. So the way that this actually looks in JavaScript is we have this thing called Socketmanager.io or Socketmanager.getIO. And this is something that we actually make for you. So you don't have to worry about the behind the scenes for that. But Socketmanager.getIO is essentially it's kind of like loudspeaker for the server to send messages to everyone. The .emit function is how you sort of emit a message. So it's like you take the loudspeaker and you say like, hey, here's what happened just now. So when you emit something, it has two fields. One is the event name, that's what is going on, and then there's the data that you're emitting. And then on the client side, they have, they turn on their ears. I don't know why that makes sense, but they turn on their ears. They listen for this specific event. So this is like the event name. And then when the event name happens, they will do some function. Okay. And the way that they do that is using this notation called socket.on, which we also provide for you. So for example, if you have the professor emits a new pset, and the type or like the name of this sort of message is new pset, and then the actual thing that he emits is the pset object, and the clients will then, on this pset, they'll like start working on it, right? So for example, like what it might look like is, this professor emits new pset, and it's like some object, right? Let's say other questions like, what's 9 plus 10? Does p equals np, whatever. And then the students will, turn on their sockets. So like they'll like open their ears and they'll listen and say, oh, when I hear a new pset has been posted, I will do some stuff. In this case, they'll like, procrastinate if it's not the last day, and if it is, then they'll do the pset. So this is kind of how sockets actually work. And in the case of Chatbook, we want the server to emit this message, and we want the clients to listen for it. Okay. So let's do that for Chatbook. So git reset -- hard and check out git checkout w8 step 5 to get caught up to where we are right now. And we will add sockets to Chatbook. But yeah, so I'll give you all a couple minutes to try this on your own. You can see the sort of notation that you would use for sockets using something like this. So the server side should say something like socketmanager.getIO and then .emit, and should emit some stuff. And the front end, the client, should be listening for that specific message. And so notably, in order for the client to hear what the server is saying, it has to be listening to the same message that the server is emitting. So for example, like this, the server is emitting a message, the client must listen for message. If the server emits something else, then the client must listen for that other thing. So yeah, I'll give you a couple minutes. If you want help or are confused, please put yourself on the help queue or ask on the questions doc. But yeah, so we're just going, like all we're doing is just converting the existing Chatbook to be able to display messages instantly. So if you want to like look at what you need to change, it will be in these files. Specifically on the server side, it is in api.js at line 98. In the client side, it is at chatbook.js line 54. But yeah, I guess you have a few minutes to work on this. If you have any questions, please raise your hand or put yourself in the help queue. Also, like y'all can talk to each other and like ask questions to each other if you want. Like it doesn't have to be dead silent in here. Feel free to have some healthy discussion about sockets. All right. So how do we add sockets to like make this live update? So notably, there's two components to doing this. One of them is the server side. The server needs to be able to shout to everyone using socket.emit or socketmanager.io.emit. And then the client needs to be able to listen to these messages using socket.on. So if you look at, if you look at our code, let me make this go away. On the server side, we want to look in, oh, let me get reset --hard, check out step 5. So on the server side, we want to look in api.js at line 98. It should say 6.1. So instead of just saving the message to the database, which I still want to do, by the way, just so we can see it later, we want to immediately tell everyone that this message has been received by the server. So what we're going to do is we're going to do Socketmanager.getIo. And then we are going to emit a message. And we can name it whatever we want, but in this case, since it's just a message, I'll just say emit message. And the actual message, the content of the message that we'll be emitting is the message that we get in, which we just made right here. So we'll just emit this thing. All right. So that's actually all we need to do on the server side. The socket manager just emits a message. That's it. On the client side, we have to listen for this specific type of message that's being emitted. So that's in chatbook.js here at line 54. There is a useEffect callback that we're going to use. So the client will use socket.on to listen for the server's messages. The specific kind of message it will listen for is the message. And when it hears that message, it will do something. In this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use add messages. All right. Which is a function that we have not implemented yet. But we're just going to say, you want to add this message at the bottom of our list of messages. Okay, so let's make this add messages function. So what should add messages do? Let's see. So let's first just define what add messages. Add messages might look something like this. It takes in some data, it outputs or does something with it. And with this data, you want to change the messages that you see. So we're just going to do set active chat to do that. And let's say we take the previous active chat. So you still want to preserve the recipient, you want to preserve all of the previous messages, but you just want to add one new message at the end. So we'll take the previous active chat, and then we're going to do some stuff with this. So we're just going to map it to actually add parentheses around this. Also, a quick tip, if you add parentheses around these sort of curly braces, that just means that's the actual thing that you're returning. So in this case, we're returning this thing that has recipient, previous or prev active chat dot recipient. Oops, dot recipient. So we're just taking the same recipient as we had originally. And then for the messages, we're going to have previous active chat dot messages, and we're just going to concat the last thing that we see. So we're just going to add this data, which is just a new message. So this is basically all we need to do. The client will turn on their socket, so they'll open their ears. They will listen for a message. And when they hear the message, they will call this function called add messages. Add messages will take the data that it hears, and then it will just add it to the end of our messages. And that's all it does. So hopefully this makes some sense. And if we reload, let's go to localhost 5000. Let's reload. Log in. Yeah, so now if I say something like hello, and I submit, well, for one, I will see it myself, but if someone else has any messages here, it should immediately show up. Yeah, actually we can test this if we just open up I don't know, let's open up Microsoft Edge, let's go. So let's log in with a different account. Hello? Okay, this is why you don't use Microsoft Edge. Okay. Anyway, if someone like else logs into this, or if you like do git checkout w8-complete, you'll be able to see all of this stuff happen. So you can send messages to me, and I can send messages to you. So w8 is cool. Let's go. Anyway, this is pretty much what there is, all there is to it. One little catch is that when you turn on a socket, you only have to do it once. Because once the socket is on, it just stays on. It's like a communication line. Once you set it up, it's just there. So if you want to close the socket at some point later, you can use socket.off. And actually, in this case, there's a slight bug. If you like go to this chat website, then you go somewhere else, like let's say you go to profile and then you come back, the old socket is still going to be on, but then you're going to make a new socket. So, if you look at, actually, I'm just going to git reset -- hard and git checkout w8 complete. You'll notice there's actually this little, oh, I didn't save it. That's why. Right. Git reset -- hard, git checkout complete. Oh, I guess it's already here. Okay, so you'll see there's this extra little return statement after the socket.on. This just essentially all it does is when you leave the site, it'll turn off the socket. That's all this does. This is just to make sure that if you like leave the website and come back to it, you won't like have multiple sockets open listening for the same thing. Other than that, that is pretty much all there is to Chatbook. So if oh, I used the wrong one. Okay, whatever. I'll be blobby pie for now. Let's go. Oh, I didn't say it. Yeah. So you should be able to see all these messages like, what's up? And click submit. Everyone else should be able to see something like this. But yeah, so if you do git reset -- hard and git checkout w8 complete, you should be able to see the final thing that we've just made, which is Chatbook with live chat. So congratulations, you have made Chatbook successfully. You can give yourselves a pat on the back for that. Notably, we only made the all chat version of Chatbook right now. So you can only chat with like everyone at the same time. But tomorrow, you will have DMs and just like more fun with sockets, and we'll get more in depth into how do you set up like actual private lines versus the sort of public, just emit the, use the loudspeaker and shout to everyone. But that is all for sockets. Remember, for the upcoming sponsor lecture with Ramp, there will be a raffle for $50 of Amazon gift card. You get one entry if you have your video on, I believe, and one entry if you ask a question. So if you have your video on and you ask a question, that's like twice as likely to, get $50, right? So do that. But yeah, so thank you.